mouth is making me money. I mean, Troy, who knew? Like, who knew that my big mouth was the secret to my success?
And actually, it's pretty amazing. I love it when people pay me to talk.
Yes.
It's fantastic. They pay me to talk, they pay me to write, and it's kind of living the dream. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not the writing's still coming. So I'm going to be at, by the time New Year is out, hopefully at 12 freelance articles this year, which isn't, I don't think is actually a terrible output.
Not at all.
Yeah, but I want more. Like I'm a greedy bastard, Troy. I got to be honest with you. I just want to do more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it. So at least for me, part of this is of my writing is always an intrinsic motive. It's because this is what I love and what I want to do. But there's also the extrinsic motive of money, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, we all
Mhm.
have to have money to survive, and so hey, there's nothing wrong with wanting to eat.
Well, no, absolutely not. No, no, it's really weird how just things have worked out. I don't know if you watched it. Like I'm starting to, I did a show for my consultant.ca, and I'm doing that now at least for the next year, at least. So I
Yeah.
get to talk about immigration, about Canada immigration to the world. My co-host tortures me with cupcakes. That's what she does. She tortures me.
Oh.
She tortures me with cupcakes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I know
That
that's
is
that's
awesome.
that's strange life, isn't it? But it's a cool one, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So I think the hardest thing for me was this, recognizing the fact that for me at least, it seems to be that I'm going to be more a broadcaster that writes instead of a writer that broadcasts, which I think is a different it's a slightly different mindset. Like for you, I get the impression you're a writer that occasionally talks, right?
Yeah, yeah. Although occasionally has turned into more regular talking of late, but I mean, that's fine. But yeah, still my primary is writing. Always has been, probably always will be.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, more than likely. Not that I don't love talking to people and love talking to writers and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, my go-to is writing and storytelling. That's it. You know, so
Which
yeah.
is nothing wrong with. By the way, I do enjoy being creative. But for me, it seems like this time I've just discovered all kinds of other creative stuff I do, and now it's just figuring out how to package it in such a strange and wonderful way. I'm drawing regularly now, and I'm making people jealous of the mountains I live at.
Oh yes, I've noticed that. Which I love those mountains, by the way. My wife and I actually went on our honeymoon to Canada and camped around the Selkirk Loop, and it's one of my favorite places on the planet. To be honest with you, those mountains are incredible.
Yeah, I know. I ended up here by accident. I think that's the weirdest like thing is just I went to go back to Calgary. And so the first roommate I had, she's not ready for anything right now. And I'm not saying like that's a good or bad thing. She just has some of her own issues she needs to deal with. The second one, we just never connected the way we wanted to or were supposed to or anything like that. Some of that was me, some of that was her. It just didn't work out. And then I found myself here. I'm like, oh no, I'm stranded in the mountains. How terrible.
What a terrible place to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it's like, oh no. I mean, and the beautiful thing is like you can get lost out here easy if you really want to. And you know, the other part about it is like there's just some cool little things today me and my roommate we got access to spring water, actual like legitimate spring water from the
Ooh,
mountain, right? So it's like
nice.
I don't know if I'm gonna want to live in Calgary if I stay here for too long. It's like I don't know if I'm gonna go back. I mean, like it's cheaper there, but it might be just worth it to stay. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I mean, I lived in northern Idaho for a while. I live in Boise now, but I lived in northern Idaho for a while, which is remote. I mean, remote. And the primary disadvantage really was the community, like the writing community around me. There just wasn't much of one. And so most of my interactions were online, which is fine to a certain extent, but it wasn't as prominent when I first started writing as it is now, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just different. Now it might be a completely different thing for me to live there, but You know, I mean, I love the mountains. I mean, I was, you know, a couple minutes from the bottom of a ski resort. Oh, poor me.
I know, darn.
You know, you
I can
know.
take a bus to my ski resort. Like I can literally take a bus there. Right? They actually, so it's like
Yeah,
I don't even have to drive. I can literally
it's
just go.
yeah, yeah, it's just awesome. I mean, it is absolutely fabulous, and I love it. But you know, like I say, it was just challenging as far as the intellectual and writing community, um, and I wanted something more, and I ended up down here accidentally. You know, it was actually my wife at the time, who's now my ex-wife, wanted to do something different with her career, and she couldn't do it up there. And so she moved down here. Things did not go well for her and her career, and they went really well for me, um, which you
Dude,
know caused some understandable issues, but it also enabled me to. It just opened my eyes to a whole new world of what I needed to do. So sometimes that happens. It just
yeah.
happens, you know. So
Yeah, I mean, my days are like, again, I'm not quite where I want to be. Like I need one more gig like what I have. If I get one more gig like what I have, I'm good. Right?
yeah,
At that point it's just saving my money up and getting like if I decide to stick around here, find something that works out. If I decide to go back to Calgary, the one advantage about being a writer is you can do that anywhere.
yep, anywhere you want to do it, anywhere you want.
Yeah.
And
Now
one of the
again,
things. Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, in my head, I was thinking like off a beach with a mountain, so it's like Hawaii. But I mean, this as far as things go, this isn't bad.
No, it's not rough. It's not rough. No, I have a friend of mine who's, you know, over the last like 6, 7 months or so, has basically been doing the van life. You know, she travels all over the place and writes. And she just said, you know, you'd be amazed what you figure out when you step outside your comfort zone,
Hmm.
you know, and put yourself in situations that are completely different than where you were before, and just let things happen. Watch what happens. You know, you never know. You never know what's going to come out of it. You never know what's going to happen. And, you know, inevitably, you, at the worst, you learn lessons along the way that are extremely valuable to the rest of your life. At best, you just experience that reset of, hey, we need something new. I mean, creative people, we like new stuff. New stuff is good, you know?
I think the biggest thing for me in this particular time and this particular place is enjoying the moment. Like there's always these bigger things going on, and some of it we're all worried about, some of it we're not so worried about, some of it, a lot of it in our own heads, probably
Yeah.
more often than truthfully. But what I realize is I'm out here every day. I wake up, I look out, I take a picture. There's one particular person that comes on the show regularly. She's insanely jealous of where I'm living right now. So there's a little joy that just like, this is where I am today. There's right. So I get to wake up, do that. I get to go into the city. I get to talk to some of the locals there. I'm slowly getting connected. The one thing about in a small town, it both follows the rules more strictly and less strictly at the same time, because it's like
Hmm.
they're very, very much like, okay, yeah, we're gonna worry about that. But at the same time, it's like, it's just us. What's up? Right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No, there are some big advantages. Well, there's advantages to a small town, and there's advantages to a bigger area. There really are. And I like certain things about both. I don't like a really big city. I'm happier, you know, where I live in Boise in the area is not all that large yet. It's growing all the time, but it's not all that large yet. But there's enough that there's, you know, there's culture and there's things around you that you can engage with. Um, but small towns, I mean, sometimes, first of all, there's some surprising culture from time to time. And then it's just, you know, everybody and everybody knows you. And it's a very comfortable and much simpler existence in many ways, you know? So there's
There's
that.
nothing wrong with simplicity, and not at
No.
all. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to be here forever. My life, if there's anything, like I was in Windsor, Ontario a month ago, which I
Yeah.
mean, I've kind of come a long way in just a very short time. And I came for like the strangest of reasons. I just had this weird, like, you're needed to do. I don't know if you ever had those like feelings in your gut where it's just like you need to be here.
Hmm. Oh yeah, and you need to listen to those. I mean, that's one thing I learned really young was you need to listen to your instincts, and that I mean it goes for every aspect of your life, relationships, career, whatever's going on. But I just learned really young if you got a feeling about something like that, you should probably act on it.
Hmm.
And every time, I tell people, I've made a lot of mistakes in my writing career and my life as well, but most of the time when the mistakes have been the worst has been the ones where I have had a feeling, an instinct that says this is wrong or you should do this, something like that, and I ignored it. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, I ignored it and said, no, no, I got this. It's going to be all right. And inevitably, it was not
No.
all right.
No.
It was not okay. Things did not work out well.
No.
So,
I've learned in my life. So one of my biggest life lessons, and this occurred to me when I was like college-ish age. No, go. I mean, I had the opportunity to hook up with an old girlfriend. Just circumstances were what they were. And she was looking for a good time, and I was like, okay, this will be fun. Right before anything really happened, though, there was like, if you do this, life as you know it would come to an end. It's literally in the back of my head. It's like,
yeah.
so here's the part that's like, so I backed up. So nothing. We didn't go beyond a certain point. That was fine. The next week, she was pregnant.
Oh.
So it was just one of those situations in my life where it just was like, I think I dodged a bullet there, right?
Yeah.
I think I dodged a bullet there, and it would have been a very different life had it not worked out that way. And I always listen to those voices for the most part. Every once in a while, I mean, I think here's the thing. I think there's two mistakes that we make. The first mistake is when we really want something and deep down we know it's not good for us, but we want it anyway. The world will give it to us, right? And although it's a painful lesson sometimes, it's a very painful lesson. I don't regret those either. I learned something, right? At least, right?
Well, yeah,
The ones that
absolutely.
really hurt are the ones where it's like you could do this and you don't.
Yeah.
And those ones hurt. Really, really hurt.
Yeah, I think this is the thing is we're humans and we explore this actually a lot through fiction. I mean, how many times do you read a book where the character gets what they want, but that's not what they need?
Yeah.
And then it turns out, and you're the whole time that when we're outside that book and we're reading that story, we're going, come on, man, can't you see it? That's the wrong thing. Don't do it. But when it's us in our regular lives, we make those mistakes from time to time. Or we make the mistakes of not taking an opportunity when a door opens and we sit still instead. And I think that makes us that you're right, those ones hurt worse than the ones where you didn't listen to your instinct, you made a mistake. Then you learn something, you pick yourself up back up and go on, but you can almost see what the alternate path would have been. Sometimes when you get an opportunity and you don't take it, you don't always see what that opportunity would have looked like in the future, and it hurts worse because you're like, that might have been my big break that I just passed up.
Well, that's just it. Like life is about opportunities, right? Even in the worst moments. So I'm a big fan of the Jocko Willink podcast. I'm actually the last few have been really interesting. It crystallized something in my head and maybe why people do this. Is the whole idea. I think one of the things I've learned to do as I've gotten older is I've detached myself from of the possible outcomes. I recognize like there's very little. We don't really control that much. Like
Nope.
we really don't. And when we get right down to it, we just do things and shit happens. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Not always what we intend. Sometimes that's not a bad thing, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Sometimes that's not a bad thing. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't, right? So but we do things and things happen. That's just how the world works. So I almost always, when in doubt, do like that. That's just seems to be my default. But what I've learned is we have this tendency to think that if we do it this way, the right way, this outcome will happen. No, it won't. Not necessarily. And
No,
you
it's
gotta. I think one of the hardest things I think as a species, we get sold on outcomes all the time. Truth of the matter is, the outcome is the least interesting thing that's sold to us. the journey, although it sounds very metaphorical, that's what we really get out of it.
Well, and it's true. I mean, think about this. Think about how advertising works and why people join a gym, right? They join a gym not because there's some fat guy sitting on a couch that said, "Yeah, I joined the gym and nothing's happened, so I'm going to check in there in 3 or 4 weeks and see what's going on because I'm a member, but I haven't gotten any thinner." Right? No, we see the guy that's in there working out, lifting barbells, and his physique is all ripped, and he's like, "I used to be sitting in front of the couch, and now I'm." But I'm like, what we don't see is that the solution isn't joining the gym. The solution is the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we've got this idea of join the gym, outcome, and I think we like to in our brains skip the journey and the outcome, especially if we know that the journey is going to be hard. Is we go, okay, because I'm like an illustration. Okay, I hate flying and lately in a lot of ways. I hate it. I hate going into airports. I'd rather drive if at all possible. It's just between the pandemic and the masks and the security in the
It's dumb
U.S.
as
and all that
fuck.
kind of stuff.
It's
Yeah,
dumb as
it's just
fuck.
dumb. Well, yeah, the security in the U.S. is a freaking joke. It's just an absolute joke. They haven't. I mean, they can't tell me they've stopped, one terrorist act from happening, but they've sure aggravated some travelers over and over. But all that being said, is I would love to. I wanted to go to Vegas for a conference this last week, right? So in order to
Yeah.
get there, the simplest way is to fly. It's an hour flight, 10-hour drive. Which one are you going to choose? Well, I'm going to choose the hour flight. Except that on the way back, I got to connect through some other city, and it takes me 5 hours to bring that hour home, right? But still, faster than driving. But the whole thing is aggravating. But when I got there, the destination was what that outcome was what mattered. But if I could have found a way to go to that outcome without undertaking the journey, but how often does that apply to our lives? Like, I want to be a best selling author, but I don't want to really write that many books, or I don't want to work on marketing, or I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? It's like we want to skip the journey, just get the outcome, you know?
Well, it's writing. It's hilarious to me because I have interviewed, dear God, we'll just say hundreds of authors. Well, I think that's a
Yeah.
good. I like
That's
we're
fair.
past, yeah, it's
That's
like
fair.
hundreds of them, right?
You're past dozens. You're down to
Yeah,
hundreds.
yeah, way past dozens. I almost feel like I should do like a book of what I've seen from the really successful ones versus the not so successful ones. Marketing is almost the make or break one moment with all of them. It's so funny to me. No, I'm going to be blunt. Like sometimes it's financial limitations, and that is a very that's forgivable.
That's
like that's a very
fair.
yeah right. But I think what blows my mind with a lot of them, not all of them, is your storytellers. Marketing is telling a story. That's all it really is, right?
Mhm.
All you have to really do is be enthusiastic about the story you tell. Because if you're going to get an advertiser to do it, I always equivalent an advertiser to a call girl that fakes it. That's what I equate an advertiser to. Now, there's some real enthusiasm but I realize like that's the big price point with an advertiser. How much is it going to cost me to be enthusiastic about your product?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I kind of have that in my head, like a call girl that fakes it. But authors are not comfortable talking about their work. And I'm like,
no, they're not. They're
why
not.
not? It's a story.
This is this is an interesting thing, and I think the successful authors that I see. So like this past week, I was at 20 books to 50K in Vegas, and it's primarily fairly successful indie authors. Now there's some new people there, but I mean, going to a conference like this is costly, and you have to have a certain mentality to invest in something like this in the first place, right? And the most successful, there's different type of business models, right? There's a definite like model for a successful writing business where you're selling books. There is a model. There are a few different models, and you're usually going to adopt one or a variation thereof. You're not going to go far from those models, right? but there are a million approaches to those models. There's a million approaches to marketing those models, right? And everybody that's successful is, not only are they marketing, but they know, they're enthusiastic about their work, and they're putting that enthusiasm and that spirit into everything that they do. They're 100% focused on, this is my work, this is the way I'm making my living, and I love what I do. And just hearing some of them talk about their stuff, it's just like there's just joy everywhere. Because I mean, as I often tell people, this job is too hard to do if you're not enjoying it. There are easier ways to make a living. There just are. So you need to love it. You know, you need to love it.
Actually, I actually I gotta blame you and people like you for something, because I realized something this year. I'm not cut out to be an employee anymore. And this cat, I'm not. And it happened. It occurred to me because I would do some temp jobs here and there. Okay, I would do some temp jobs, and I would never last long on any of these jobs. The first, right, and it wasn't that my work effort wasn't there. No, the ethic was there. I just realized, like, for me, this is why I'm freelancing, ladies and gentlemen. This is what it comes right down to it. I can look at my boss and I'm treating them like a person, and there's nothing they can do to me. Right. That's just the feeling. Like, I just have no guilt, remorse, shame, nothing. What's my job? Do it. And if they don't give me the tools to do it, I'm not going to kill myself to do it anymore.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And once the last job was weird. I did nothing wrong and they let me go. It was one of those like shrug, weird, whatever. But the one before that, they put me on this job. They don't have anybody with me. I'm looking at this whole job. I don't know. They showed me once how to do it. Basically, didn't have anybody with me for a little bit. I'm like, shrug. Right. I'm just going to do the best I can. I'm not going to worry about it, because they're not worried about it either, or else they wouldn't have put me in this situation. Right. Troy's laughing his ass off because he can guess what happened.
I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah. Just that's it. I just shrugged. I just couldn't. I'm not going to kill myself for nothing. And I will do everything in my power to succeed at a job. But if you're not going to make the effort, and I'm very conscious you're not making that effort, why should I? And that's a very
an
employee doesn't think like that.
Yeah. So for those out there in the audience who may or may not have heard me before, is I always tell people, look, I knew I wanted to be a writer from the time I was very young. But of course everybody told me I couldn't, so I believed them, because of course they're the experts, right? And so I go out into the world and try to work real jobs, right? Which that's a bullshit name in and of itself.
Yes.
And I have worked part-time jobs from time to time. I worked for Apple for a while, stuff like that. But I'm like, here's the thing, is that I'm not passionate about any of it. So if I'm there for a reason, I go in there and I do my job and I leave, and there's almost nothing that the employer can do to me. You know, like, oh, you're going to fire me? Okay. You know, then let me know quickly so I can leave. I don't want to waste any more time here.
Well, that's it.
And so, and here's what's funny. So at Apple, I worked part-time there for a while in one of the Apple stores. Part-time. And I was the top sales guy on the one manager's team for like an entire quarter. And I was working half the hours that other people were working. And part of it was, I didn't give a shit. People would walk in, I'd be like, what do you need? And I'd show them what they need, and I'd sell it to them. Then they'd walk out. I'd just grab somebody else, because I don't like standing around. Other people be standing around, talking to each other, doing all that stuff. And I just didn't do it. I'm like, I don't care. And so, you know, there was really nothing they could say, like, oh, you didn't get enough people to add AppleCare. Yeah, but I beat your top salesman by $5,000. So break my heart. You know, so I'm like, I don't care. So I left on my own, and they were really surprised when I left. And I'm like, why are you surprised? Like, I never cared. So why are you surprised that I left?
Because some people don't do it. Like, some people talk a good game. Like, okay, so hold on a second. I want to see if I can fix my camera. I'm trying a new camera out here. So let me see if I.
Yeah, you're a little unfocused there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what exactly. It's one of those. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll figure this out as we go.
So
now I'm even less focused than what I was. So we're gonna do something here. We're gonna do something here. We're gonna do that. Oh, never mind. We're not doing that. Hey. I know what I'm doing, or something.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, I just reset the system.
You're back. Yeah.
New camera, new toys, ladies and gentlemen. So here's the thing: when I was working at a job I nicknamed the Sparkle Muffin. So it tells you how much I really like cared about the job, right? I would always tell them like I was always planning on going, and I was like even when I was younger. There is a mentality shift as a freelancer. I think one of the hardest things about it is you got to recognize that your job's mostly here, little here, but it's mostly the approach here. That's what it really comes down to. Like you can learn new tools. Like I just found a really cool way to find all the content editors on Twitter. It was really fun that I found this little trick. It's like, all right, I can really pitch like a madman now. We're gonna see what happens. And I probably get dear so-and-so, for fuck's sake, stop pitching us. But that's okay. That's another conversation for another day. But yeah. So again, folks, you do learn tricks of the trade as you go, and once you have a clear idea. But you have to have a clear idea of who you are, what you want, where you're going. And for everybody, that's a mindset. And it took me a long time to get to that point. But once I got there, right, it's like. So the first year as a freelancer, it's like, what if I fuck this up? The next, right? That was in the back of my head. Yeah. I don't have that in my head anymore either. This is where I'm at now. It's like, I'm very close to getting to the number I want to be where I can make a full-fledged living for myself as a freelancer. So I just need one more gig, maybe two more gigs. I can do videos. I can write articles. I can do podcast stuff. That's my services. That's what I'm going to offer people. And I have a voice and a big mouth. That's who I am. That's what I do. That's what I'm going to be. And I'm going to succeed inevitably because I'm awesome. That takes a certain bit of soul searching as a freelancer to get to that point. But once you're there, I'm not going to say you're inevitably successful, but you are no longer getting in your own way. And that is a very, very different mindset.
Yep. And that is the number one thing for authors or any type of freelancer actually is that your number one obstacle is yourself. There's lots of work out there for all kinds of different fields, freelance and otherwise, whatever you want to do. There's tons of things out there to do, no matter what the economy looks like. Right now, it's very much in our favor, at least in the U.S. But I mean, it's very much in our favor. I can pretty much command whatever price I want at this point for the different skills that I provide, right? So there's that, there's no floor when you're a freelancer. I mean, when you kind of work for somebody else, there's a minimum you're going to earn. When you're a freelancer, there's no minimum, but the biggest realization is there's no maximum either. There's no ceiling. There's no ceiling on what you can do. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody that you're never going to have doubts, that imposter syndrome never creeps in, all that kind of stuff, or that there's never a moment when you say, maybe I should just go get a regular job. I'm into this. I've been working full-time at home since 2009 with an occasional part-time job here and there for, whatever reason, right? But that's it. I freelance. That's it. So there's no floor, there's no ceiling, there's no guarantees, and when things get scary, you deal with them. I mean, but it is a definite different mindset because you have to have confidence in, because you are your brand, you are your company, you are the one responsible for everything. Even if you start to outsource stuff, you outsource your accounting, you're still responsible for it at the end of the day. You got to pay your bills, So it's just, everything comes down to you, and you have to have a certain amount of that confidence of, I can do this and things are going to be wonderful, or it's going to be really difficult for you. It's going to be a challenge.
It's going to be, I think that's it. I think that was the thing. I almost had to, it's going to sound really terrible, beat out the Canadian conservative out of me, just to like take him, have a conversation with him. It's like, hey, look, listen, I realize your worries are totally actually they're douchebag and nonsensical. They don't serve me here. So this is what I'm going to do. Here's some liquid courage. Drink it.
Yeah.
One of two things will happen. You'll be really happy or you'll be really asleep. Either way, your voice will go away. Right? Yeah. Because again, Canadians are very I'm more of a risk taker than the average Canadian. I can say that with relative confidence, right? But even I have those. I grew up here. I have those moments where it's like, maybe I should think a little bit more conservatively. Maybe I should, and then I just realized, like, you know what, this shit's gonna get in my way. I'm not saying like, inevitably I'm not going to invest in crypto, possibly make my own pirate ship and like, just occasionally raid people. I'm not saying I won't do that. What I am going to say, we're coming to a dishonest time, folks. In all seriousness, we probably are. It's going to get a little weird out there before it gets better. That's why Troy's laughing a little bit, right?
Well, yeah. And it's also, I mean, there's different people that are different personalities. And there are people that I've met that, because I used to just say, okay, if you really want to be a writer and you want it bad enough, or you want to be a freelancer bad enough, you can do it. And then I have just met some people that are just not, it's just not possible for them because their mindset and their personality just don't. My wife is extremely risk averse. Like she likes to play everything safe. I'm the guy that's like, put it all on red. What the hell? Well, it's kind of good that we balance each other out that way. That way I'm not betting the grocery money on the wheel, whatever.
Number 7.
But,
Number 7.
Put it all on 7. All on 7. So it's a good thing I'm not doing that, and it's a good thing that she has that mentality in a lot of ways. So people have different personalities, different mentality. You've got to figure out who you are and what works for you. And some people are just not cut out to be entrepreneurs. If you get really nervous when you start thinking about those type of things, it's time to really evaluate whether that's the path you need to take. Now, I still say that most people can do it if you really want to, but it's a matter of that desire also involves a certain amount of that chat with your Canadian conservative or whoever you got that's holding you back, that's inside of you and saying, hey man, let's sit down and have a chat and see if we can get over this thing. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's just the way it is.
I love that you laughed your ass off when I said it because you knew exactly who I was talking about when you said
No. I know exactly. And hey, I love my Canadian friends. I told my wife, now when we went to Canada for our honeymoon, I literally told her this. I said, first of all, Canadians apologize a lot. I said, second of all, Canada is always on sale. Because the exchange rate, it's always on sale. Everything's on sale in Canada. And she didn't believe me. She thought that, it's just me joking around, pulling her leg like I usually do. We get into Canada and we've been there for a day. And she's like, Jesus, I've been apologized to like 8 times today and nobody did anything. They're like, we're sorry, you're going to have to pay for that meal you just ate. It's hilarious.
It's a politeness that borders on a little bit of like self-effacing a little bit. It borders on that a little bit. Right? I mean,
not always, and not all Canadians. I don't want to, but I'm like, it was just amusing to me that the culture is so much more polite than just across the border. Just 10, 20 miles away. The difference is huge. And I mean, I actually love it. I mean, I love the Canadian culture and I would get my wife to move there, except that she has this aversion to huge amounts of snow and being cold. So,
that's legit.
That's legit.
Our beer.
I'm like, I don't care. I'll go skiing. And she's like, no, not going to happen.
What you introduce her is you get her on some of the Canadian vintages up here. She'll be like, holy crap. Like this is their average. Like this is their average stuff. Their hardcore stuff is this. And she'll be like, what? It's like, yeah. It's like I'm not going to lie. My least favorite thing to do in the United States is drink. In the United States, it's my least favorite thing to do about it because it's not that you don't have good like hard liquors. You do, but your beer hurts me. Like it legitimately hurts me.
Well, first of all, so here's the thing. First of all, you got to drink the right stuff. So there's craft beers, and then
crafts are okay. They're okay.
Regular American beers, though, the stupid Bud Light and Coors Light. I mean, I had a friend of mine sat down and we ordered beers, and I ordered some craft thing, and he orders a Bud Light, and I'm like, I thought you were drinking beer, dude. I don't know what that is, but that's not beer. That's gross.
No. Seriously. One time I was so like, okay, I'm in a mountain area, right? So that means I'm pretty high up. So my beer tolerance is higher when I usually go stateside than normal too, because I am coming back to Earth. Unless I'm going to Denver.
Yeah.
Right. Unless I'm going to Denver. Right. But so one time I literally went to a bar because they didn't have good beer. They just had the crap. I got bloated. I didn't even get a buzz. I got bloated. Yeah. I stopped because it hurt the stomach after a while. It's like,
yeah, no, that stuff is gross.
Well, no, because it was all you had. It was all they had. Yeah. It was just like, next day.
Now that is a disadvantage of small town America. I can tell you that right now. Yes. Sometimes there'll be some guy in that town who got sick of all the crap beer and decided to start a brewery and does a good job, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. But that is the exception to the rule. You go into some of these bars and you're like, what's the darkest beer you have? And I'm like, we got some Michelob. And I'm like, that's kind of dark. And I'm like, what? Like, I got to get out of here. But so last year, though, I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic. So I'm supposed to avoid the carbs. So the fortunate thing about that is Scotch has very few carbs. It's good for you. It's healthy.
Yeah, the only thing about Scotch, this is what I noticed about Scotch. It's the way it sneaks up on you is this: sitting down, you don't feel it. Like you feel a little bit of it, but you don't feel it like that much. Then you stand up. And all of a sudden, all that Scotch you drank that seemed like a good idea at the time, you might be back on the floor. It's like, hi, I'm up and I'm down and I'm not getting up anymore.
So I'll tell you a story about that since we're telling stories, why not? So I used to be part of a Scotch club that we had here in Boise that's kind of hit or miss anymore. But we used to have Scotch nights, and you go and everybody'd bring different bottles, and we had different bottles we'd bought together. So you could try all different kinds of Scotch that you normally couldn't afford to buy on your own. And also, you didn't go buy $100 bottle of a certain type of Scotch and then go, oh, well, I don't like this one. We still got a $100 bottle in your cabinet, right? So I took my wife to this when we first met. Because when I started introducing you to really good bourbons and scotches, she was like, oh, that's what this is about. Because of course she'd had crap, and if you drink the crap stuff, like people say, I don't like scotch. I'm like, hang on, what are you talking about? Because what that means is you don't know what region you like. You don't know what you like yet, right? So I'm like, all right, whatever. But my wife discovered, and I didn't think about it, but usually on those nights we would smoke cigars too. Well, if you are experienced in this area at all, you know that when you mix nicotine and alcohol, especially if you are not a regular smoker, that the effects of the alcohol are highly amplified.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife, who is not really a Scotch drinker, but is experiencing drinking all kinds of great Scotch, is feeling okay. She's got a pretty high alcohol tolerance. I start smoking a pipe with some cherry tobacco in it. And she goes, oh, let me try that. So she tries it. She goes, I really like it. And she finishes my pipe sitting down, and then she stands up and starts kind of spinning. You know that spin people, and you're like, whoa, okay, hang on, you got to slow down. Like, sit down, you need to drink some water, that type of stuff. And she was hammered, not because of how potent the Scotch was, which it is, but because she had combined it with nicotine without really thinking about it. I hadn't thought about it because I do it all the time. Like, what's the big deal?
It's your norm, so you're good with it. But someone's like, but again, when you're sitting down, like Scotch is one of those ones where it can sneak up on you because you're sitting down. It doesn't fit the same way, but when you stand up, it's like, okay, I had a few, right?
Yeah. Tequila too is another one, especially if you get good tequila. So people that drink bad tequila, I'm like, why do you do that? First of all, it's horrible. Second of all, if it's the bad stuff, it's got all kinds of impurities in it, so you're going to be really hungover the next morning.
Yeah, and I don't.
Last, when you stand up, you're going to discover that Mexico is south of you, and you're going to try to dive there. Whether you want to or not, your body's going to try to return to south of the border, man. You're gonna anyway. It's bad news.
Tequila,
news.
Tequila is like my worst hangovers have been tequila. So I generally do not touch it. Right.
Oh yeah.
So
No, it's another one. That's another alcohol where once you get to a certain level, it's fine. You can drink as much as you want, except that you have to be able to afford it. To
yes,
afford to drink that much. But you can drink as much as you want, and you won't really get hungover. But if you're down in the cheaper levels of certain types of alcohol, you're gonna hurt yourself.
big time.
And if you mix certain types, you're gonna hurt yourself. And you'd think we would know this by the time we reach a certain age. We would have discovered in college, oh, I mixed those two things, and that didn't go well. But it seems like we're still constantly learning as human beings. I need to make that mistake one more time, just to be
See,
sure.
we're in love. We're in love with the outcomes. Like I said, we just fall in love
Yeah,
with the outcome. We don't forget. We
forget
forget about
about the
everything else.
journey.
Yeah, we forget about everything else.
Forget about
right?
the
So,
journey and the secondary outcome that comes the next morning.
yeah, but yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing, right? I look at. Here's the other thing too. I'm 40. I just turned 40. So me at 30 and me at 40, there's just a difference. At 30, I couldn't drink like I did when I was 20. But I could still drink and hold my own and prob for the most part, like, stay relatively hungover. I'm 40. I can still drink like I did when I was 30, but I feel it a hell of a lot more. And I'm not even going to try to drink like what I did when I was 20. Right? Because it's just, yeah.
Yeah, your body just can't handle it as much. The other thing is that your taste, what I found too, is that your taste changes as you get older. When you were younger, you're like slamming back some Fireball and going, "Oh man, this is good stuff." You get to a certain age and you're like, "Man, this tastes like
It's ass.
something terrible."
Yeah.
And so you just, I mean, your tastes evolve. It's the same with a lot of different things. As you get older, hopefully your tastes refine and evolve, and you stop doing the stupid things you did when you were younger. I mean, and it's kind of the same for like your way of living as well. But what I found is that the older I get, the simpler I like things to be. When I was in my 20s and 30s, okay, confusion, chaos, running around, that's great. What I like now is just simplifying my life and being like, I mean, and this sounds funny because I have a very elaborate computer setup in front of me, right? Except that it's completely designed to make my process simpler.
Hmm.
So it even though it seems elaborate, it's actually simpler than some of the setups I've had in the past. Why? Because I want to make my life simpler and less complex. You know, so
So
there's
that's
that
also
too.
what you value. Now, I've been
Yeah.
valuing this since I was in my mid 20s, and that was saving time. Because I recognize something
Mm-hmm.
very important in that time is the one thing you can't get back. Also,
Mm-hmm.
very important thing as a freelancer, I'm going to mention this real quick before I continue down the story. The other big price point is your time. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do a job for you, I'm going to get paid for this job. If I'm not going to get paid for this job, or if I'm not going to enjoy this job, actually, if I'm not going to enjoy this job, I'm going to part charge you more. I'm going to get something out of this, either
Yep.
more money or more joy. The more joy, the less money I'll be willing to do it for. Now, again, there are limits to how low I can go, but you can talk me into it, right? If I don't enjoy it, you're going to pay more.
Yeah.
This is known to some people as an asshole tax. It's not. It's a resentment
No.
tax.
No,
Yeah.
no. What it is, as a freelancer, like I say, this job is too hard not to enjoy what you're doing, right?
Yep.
Writing, freelance, whatever it is. If you do art, same thing. If you're not enjoying it, if you're doing some commission for somebody and you hate it, you know what? It's probably not worth it. There's easier ways to make that money. I mean, you can break bad, get an RV, go cook some meth, whatever it is you want to do. I mean, there's something you can do that's easier than this, right?
Absolutely.
So we're not going for easy necessarily, but I'm going for as much joy and as much reward as possible. And that's really, I'm not looking to become a trillionaire and go into space. I'm just looking to, live a decent life, feel like I'm being compensated for my time. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things that you can do to rescue your time. and to save that time. And nobody gets extra. Nobody gets an extra amount of time. So it's a matter of what you do with that time. And like when you start outsourcing tasks in this or any other business to other people, what you're really doing is rescuing part of your time that you're spending doing something that's not wonderful for you.
That's the whole of it, guys. And
Yeah, that's the whole
and
deal.
yeah, your time is valuable, and it's also why simplicity becomes a lot better too. I have I have now 9 rules of success. The 9th rule is don't fall in love with the outcome. It's almost the rest is rain, but the thing is, it's to remind myself that nothing's guaranteed. I think we always need to have that reminder in the back of my head. But that all said, the very first rule is show up. I think it's the dumbest rule ever, but I also realize in this life, there's really not much else to measure anything by. Did they show up?
Well, and you know what? Here's the thing about that first rule is there are people that just don't show up. They want so I mean examples. People like to they want a lot of times they come to like a conference like the one I went over the last week, and what they really want is someone to show them the proper button to push.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I want to push this button and get this outcome. Exactly what we've been talking about. We could call this episode outcomes, and
yes,
we sort of have stayed on track. But but I mean, as much as we ever do, but we could have called it outcomes because basically people a lot of times when they show up, they want somebody to show them the button to push. They're like, you have done this, you have achieved this, so just show me which button to push so I can achieve it too. And so I talked to some people that are like, what's the key, this week? And they're like, what's the key? And I'm like, keep working, keep showing up. I mean, there's some things you need to do when you show up.
mm-hmm.
But the first key is you need to be there. If you're simply not there, well, there's nothing I can do to help you. So I'm like, how do you make more money from writing more books? Well, first of all, you need to write more books. I mean, it sounds really basic, but you'd be surprised the number of people that say, I've written this one book and it just hasn't been successful. What am I supposed to do? Have you written another one yet? Maybe this one isn't the one. How many times do we hear those overnight success stories from authors who have written 10 books that didn't do squat and finally wrote one that got the attention they deserved? It wasn't that those other books weren't bad or that those other books were bad. It was that they had to keep showing up. And then
Mm-hmm.
people have found what they've written before. They found success, but they need to have that one thing that hits, and you don't know what it's going to be. So you got to show up and keep doing stuff.
Well, that's just it. And for me, it's like I just mentioned this at the very beginning. I have a big mouth, but look how many episodes it's taken. I'm getting to the point now. I'm getting 400 to 600 plays, downloads a week. That's a solid number. It's not the biggest. It's not the smallest either. So, right. It's better than a lot of people. I can advertise. I can actually get advertising revenue for this. Right. But again, my model, and this is actually the model it doesn't matter if you're an author or a freelancer, whatever, builds your audience. That's author and podcast, builds your audience. How do you do that? You keep bringing episodes out, and you try to be somewhat good at your job. I'm okay. Yeah. I think I know something about it, but that's we'll leave it at that, right?
Well, but think about this though. Just to interject one thing, think about this though. Even if you're a freelancer, what is your goal? To build your audience so that more people will hire you.
Mm-hmm.
The more people that hire you on a regular basis, the more money you make, and the less other stuff that you don't want to do that you have to do. Right? Then you can pick and choose from your audience who you want to work for.
Well,
I mean,
the ultimate goal
ideal?
Yeah, well, the ultimate goal as a freelancer is so you don't have to look for work. It comes to you. That's the ultimate goal as a freelancer, right? So you build clients. And how do you build clients? You do work. I got the best rejection ever from the editor Authors Magazine. I can't use this story. Please keep sending me more pitches. That was exactly what does that mean? I have a client, a regular client, not even trying.
Exactly.
Right?
And here's what happens is that person will remember you and say, okay, that pitch wasn't right at this time for this particular thing, right? But I know this guy has chops and he can write. And so I've had people come back to me and say, hey, man, I know this part didn't work out, but how about we do this together instead? And I'm like, okay. Because what you're doing is you've earned a certain amount of trust. And this is another thing. We could have a whole new episode, a whole other episode on trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because not focusing on the outcomes is one thing, but not focusing on the outcome also helps you develop trust with your audience. For them to understand, I'm going to deliver a certain thing to you that's going to have a certain level of quality every time. And if I let you down, I want you to let me know and I'm going to make it right. Right? Which is kind of like any customer relationship if you think about it.
Yeah.
But it's like we forget to apply this to creative things too. There's a weird thing in the United States and elsewhere as well where people somehow undervalue creativity. They undervalue writing and stuff like that, yet they utilize those things every day. So whenever I hear somebody say something like, well, the creative arts, that's not real work, or something like that, I say, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go an entire day without consuming anything that was creative. Turn off your radio. Don't watch TV. Don't read anything. Don't read anything on the internet other than what you can find on social media, but don't click on a single article that anybody wrote. Don't listen to music. Nothing. I want you to go a whole 24 hours without doing that. And then at the end of that time, I want you to tell me again how creative things have no value. Right? They have value, and part of it is us as freelancers need to realize that what we do has value so that we can charge appropriately for it, right? But we also need to help people overcome this stigma that sometimes people feel when they embark on these things, as if, well, because that's what gets you into that trouble where you say, maybe I need to go get a real job. You have a real job. You have a real job. You have a career. You have a real job. Okay, so you're doing something that's a little bit outside the norm, maybe. Who cares? You still have a real job. So I think it's important for people to understand when they embark upon any of these endeavors that that this is a real job. This is real work. It's significant. It matters. It's worth something, so you can charge for it. And people should be willing to pay you for it. And if they're not your customer. They're not your client. And it's okay to send them down the road.
So the article I just pitched, and I think you'll like this, is the 4 reasons to fire a client, and also from both the freelancer's perspective and the client's perspective, because all 4 things apply to both. And there's a degree of forgiveness depending on which reason. For example, not ready for the job. Mm-hmm. That one is the most forgivable, right? But also, I mean, you have to go back and if you're the freelancer, you got to go kind of back and get yourself some more credits before they look at you again. That's just how it works. If you're the client, well, you know what? You're just not ready. When you're ready, you'll come. Yeah. I've been on both sides of that one. Emotional instability. That can be either the most forgivable or the least forgivable, depending upon the baggage that comes with it. And emotional instability happens to us all, depending on situations like the pandemic. Definitely, I don't think anyone was sane during those first 6 months. And I think that's a fair assessment, right? So there's a degree of forgiveness there that you can give to scenarios. How much baggage you put on somebody with your emotional grief. Be very careful of that, because sooner or later someone's just going to give you a big giant finger, no matter how sympathetic they might want to be with you. Yep. Number 3, they don't listen to your expertise. That goes both ways. If I ignore my client, they should fire my ass. And my client ignores me, I should also maybe fire their ass. Now, that one's forgivable sometimes only because it works. Yeah. If there's a valid reason for it, I mean, you both got, I mean, that's one of those communication ones. Mm-hmm. And then the 4 is, they don't do it. And the 4th, it's not quite the same as not listening. It's they don't do a single thing you say. They don't give you a single thing you need. That goes both ways. Well, yeah. You don't give me what I need to do the job, I'm not doing the job. And if I'm not, giving you what you need, so you're not gonna pay me. That's just how it goes. Yeah. By the way, that's legit. Yeah, and that's from ascending to descending order of levels of forgiveness. Not ready is the most forgivable. Sometimes you bite off more than you can chew. I know many a person on both ends of that spectrum that will admire that more. Again, it might be annoying in that moment, but more often than not, shit happens, right?
Yeah.
Emotional stability is, again, situational. It can be the worst, but more often than not, it's just like, you know what, when you are a little bit better, not it's both ways, we'll talk again. You just need to deal with whatever you need to deal with. Not listening, again, if the end result is better, sure. But that one's not as forgiving as the other two. And the last one is almost, I don't know of a single situation where that's forgivable at all.
Yeah. That is the emotional baggage one really could be in position number 2 or 3 depending upon the situation.
Yes.
And I've had it with people where, I mean, and this happened just recently where I had a PR gal that I, was working for a client, but she just, as far as emotional stability, she couldn't handle it. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do about that because this work still needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, I can say, yeah, if you're better later, you can come back. But because there was also actually another party, another client involved, he was like, no, I don't want to work with her again.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's completely fair on his part because to him, he was like, hey, I paid this money. I need this work done. So I need somebody that can do it. If you're having an emotional hard time, then find me somebody else that can do it or do something. And as a freelancer, sometimes too, what you need to be able to do is have people like I still edit fiction on a limited basis, but on a very limited basis in a very limited niche because that's what I want to do, and I don't want to edit fiction in other ways. And I'm not at the point where I was when I first started out, where I'm like starving and I'll take anything, right? But I will tell people if I can't do this for you, I'll help you find somebody who can, who will do it for you. I
Mm-hmm.
know plenty of editors out there, right? So sometimes as that person, if you're in that situation where either you're not ready for the job or you have that emotional instability, both of those things, a saving grace for you as a freelancer that gives you an out that you can come back to later, is to say, well, I can't do this right now, but I know someone who can. And this is why it's really important to have a network and be connected with your peers too. First of all, because it can be a very isolating job. So, be connected with your peers just for your own personal sanity. Even if you're an introvert, do that virtually, whatever it is you need to do to manage, but be connected with your peers to a certain extent because that gives you that opportunity to know, okay, if I can't forge this outcome, I know somebody who can. It's a great out to solve those issues because all of those issues are solvable. All of them are fixable
Mm-hmm.
on both ends. It's just a matter of the willingness of both parties to fix them, and realizing the fact that the only thing you can control is your reaction to that situation. You can't control that other person. There's lots of stuff we're not in control of, but you can control your reaction to it. If they're just not listening to you, you have the option of going, okay, I'm going to finish this part of the job and then I'm out, or whatever it is that you need to do.
Well, I'll tell you an example where I wasn't ready. There's this magazine I was working for. Now, there are mistakes made on both ends, but I'm like, for the most part, though, it was on me. I simply didn't deliver what they needed in time. It wasn't I didn't have the writing chops to do it. It was
Yeah.
it's just I was not ready for it. But this is what I did. I thanked them both very much for the opportunity. Right? I just said, you know what? I'm really sorry it didn't work out. I wish I could have been the person. I wasn't. And the impression I got was because I went out of my way to say thank you. Right? Even though it did not, I was fired. Let's be honest, folks. I was fired. I'll be the first to admit it. I said thank you. That when again, in this industry, agents will tell you this. They hate to give them the word no. They have to, but how you handle no, how you handle being fired, how you handle being rejected, because this is at the end of the day the rejection business. I hate this. I say it like that because it's like
No, it is, but it's true.
Yeah,
It's true. And your reaction when I was working as an acquisitions editor, the big difference between whether I would even consider an author stuff again was their reaction to it. The other thing people have to realize is that people talk to each other. If they're in the same industry, they talk to each other. So that person fires you and you go off on them like it's all their fault when they know it's not. And even you know it's not, but you're working out your angst or whatever. You know what? That person's going to tell the next person down the line, and you might find yourself in a difficult position where you have a really hard time getting a job or getting a gig or whatever because you shot yourself in the foot. You talked to the most popular editor on the bar circuit. you know, and you
Well,
talk
well,
back to
yeah.
them.
Well, no, it goes both ways. Like I had to fire a client because they did three of the four things on that list. The one
Yeah,
they weren't was emotionally unstable, right?
yeah,
The other three, however, I needed dates and certain names. I never got that, so I couldn't do the job the way I wanted to do it. They didn't take my advice on certain things. Some of that's me too. Like some of that was, and again, just being by hindsight
oh yeah,
2020.
yeah,
I screwed up too. I'll be the first to admit it. But when push really came to shove, I just looked at it as like, would I work with that person again? Well, based upon the action that it has been almost a year and a half since I've spoken to them, no. Why
yeah,
would I work with them again? It's not because and again, it's not. I don't want this to feel like it's not a personal attack. This is just like
yeah,
I had to do it. It sucked. I had to do it. It was the right move for both of us, I think.
yeah,
And but I won't work for them again because frankly, right?
yeah. Well, yeah. Every time I've had to actually fire a client, which has been rare, I just have determined that probably 90% of the time I won't go back to work for them. Maybe more than 90%. And the reason is whether they take it well or not, depending upon how they take it, whatever the situation is. There was probably something that it wasn't a fit unless one of the or the other of us or both of us grow to completely different places. It's highly unlikely we're going to be able to make that work again if we couldn't make it work the first time. Even if so, it's just kind of it's one of those things just kind of risky, right?
Oh,
And
sure.
so and I'm okay with a certain amount of risk. I'm not completely risk averse unless I've been burned once already. Then I'm like, well, I don't think I'm necessarily going to go back and see if that stove is still hot. There because there's more opportunities out there. So sometimes I'll see that they're doing well later on with someone else, and I'm like, hey, that's great, that's fantastic. Whatever was going on before, they've either figured it out or this person is maybe more tolerant than I am. I don't know. So
No, it's fair. No, it's fair. But again, just since we're talking about all these things, like that's the next article I'm pitching. Actually, I'm pitching right now to a couple places. It's like I think freelancers really need to think about that because we have a tendency,
mhm.
writers have to undervalue our worth. I truly believe this is the honest truth that the biggest money left in the planet for anyone to make is intellectual property
Oh yeah, for sure,
by a
for
shot.
sure.
Um,
Yeah,
I
and
actually had a thought because you're talking about new the artificial like AI like voice stuff, right? It occurs to me that actually that's going to be the next intellectual property war. Who
yeah,
owns those voices? Because that is where the real money is going to be in the future. Look, I'm not worried about audio like narrators losing their ability to get work because I kind of equate that to like the McDonald's. Like this is the thing.
hmm
We have a fast food version of a voice.
hmm
Wonderful. Wonderful. Congrats. And you know what? And there might be a point in my career when I really do this. Well, no, not me. I have a big ass mouth. I'll just do it myself. But 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 there might come a point when authors start that they're going to want to use one of these voices. Absolutely.
hmm
But if everybody uses it, then the narrators will come back for one really simple reason. Those voices stand out. You're going to look for
hmm
new and different ways, and creating new voices is also going to be, I think, a big money thing going forward as well. For
hmm
that reason I just mentioned. So intellectual property is going to go into another completely different thing. Who owns that voice?
Well, yeah, and that's the question is who owns that voice, and then if the voice generates the content, who owns the content?
Hmm.
And there's whenever there's an advance like this, there's always a trade off. There's inevitably a trade off, and the trade off, of course, right now is like who owns what. As we go into this metaverse and this AI and all those different things like that, the question is who owns it? Because whoever owns it controls a lot of different things. And so, as authors, obviously, we need to be careful to protect our intellectual property and make sure that as much as possible we own that because that's really our stock in trade. but there are still so many things out there that machines can't create that we can. And there is a ton of really fun stuff happening to create new intellectual properties that writers and other creatives are a huge part of. So,
Yeah,
I don't see things like that as a threat. I see them as an opportunity.
absolutely.
You know,
No,
it's
no,
it's an
I tend to
opportunity.
agree. I do think business will change because our
Oh
business
yeah,
always
it's
will.
going to change. It's going to change for sure. I mean, the big five, as far as publishers, the big five are on life support, as far as I'm concerned. They don't,
Actually, they're
you
done.
know, yeah,
They,
they're
they,
they're
they,
on
they
life support. They're in hospice. They're having trouble keeping up with the world, and
what?
you know,
Yeah.
they can't change rapidly enough. They're basically dinosaurs that are at the end of their era. And if there may be some of those companies that are flexible enough that if they adapt, they may survive with their own type of thing. But at some point, we're just going to see them disappear, and it's going to be a different creative world. And there's tons of people out there that are taking advantage of this opportunity, despite the fact that there are some people who are out there lamenting that these places are disappearing.
Well,
It's just going to happen. It's going to
I,
happen.
I had this like epiphany because my first Alice in Wonderland poetry book was nominated for an award. I published it myself.
Yeah.
I had this like really big giant epiphany. It's like I'm going to get noticed on my own. And again, it sounds like a really arrogant thing, but it's like, nope, I think that's the right way to do this. I'm going to get noticed on my own. So if I'm going to get noticed on my own, why would I do business with certain publishers? And this is the thing, again, this is just me as a businessman now, right? Would I still work with a company like Tor? Yes, I would, but only under certain circumstances. And this might
Yeah.
sound very arrogant to some people that want the traditional publishing dream, but the truth of the matter is, what I want is to build my audience and to build my audience in specific ways. I know who I am, I know what I do. So that's what interests me. It's also why, for example, next month I'll be interviewing some heavy metal bands. Why? It fits what I do.
Yeah.
It fits what I
Well,
do.
here's the thing: whenever you bring someone else into the mix, you lose a certain aspect of that control. You also lose a certain amount of responsibility. They become responsible for some of the things that they take over. So it's a matter of like, what what do you want to control and what do you want to be responsible for? The other thing people don't realize, a lot of times, I think, is that you don't need a huge audience to make a living at this. You
Mhm.
need a decent sized audience, but there are tons of people out there. I met a lot of them this week that are what I would call mid-list authors. They don't have a huge following. Unless you're a deep reader in that genre, you don't know who they are, and they're making $250,000 a year.
Mhm.
Okay, this is just the way this business is. We don't need that much to make this work. But if I'm going to make that same $250,000 with a book with Tor, I need an audience that's 5 times the size of the audience I need to make it on my own.
Yeah. And
I mean,
also,
and that's just real. That's
yeah,
real.
no, it's totally real. And the thing is, what I'm hoping to do, because I had this talk with Dirk Manning earlier this week, ironically enough, because we were talking about comics.
Yeah.
Comics, I think, are so. One of my little experiments next year is I'm thinking March after I release my next book, which I'm writing and drawing. I'm going to need some scotch myself when that day it comes out. but because it's like, holy shit, I never thought I'd be doing that in a million years. But either way, I'm kickstartering my Alice book. Like my
Hmm.
Alice will be the first 2 books. This really tiny book, and then the actual like what I'm just releasing now. I'm going to turn those into an omnibus for Kickstarter. Why? Because for me, I realize it's not about the name brands, the awards. I don't give a shit about any of that. All I care about is building my audience. And where do I think the audience is going to be? Kickstarter is a big spot. Not the only spot, but it's a big spot. There's
It's a good
Patreon.
place to
There's
start.
yeah,
It's a good place
exactly.
to start. That's the thing. Is well, and this is the other thing, is like all the different business models we see around all these creative things, right? All of them have something in common. That something in common is a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it's exactly goes back to your rule number one: show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Show up. So I have to show up where I think this is going to work for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's going to start for me. And I can certainly build an audience on Kickstarter that translates to an even larger audience later on other platforms. But I have to start somewhere. Or I
Well,
can start on those other platforms, build a big audience, do a Kickstarter, and tap into that audience. It can work a number of different ways. It's just a matter of like, where do you want to start? Where do you want to show up first?
actually, I'll use this example. We're on Twitch right now.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, this is both not falling in love with the outcome and that starting point that you're mentioning, kind of merging into one. I love the video game communities. Why am I here? Because I have a big mouth. I think I can be very entertaining. I've been watching how some of these streams work, and this is a place where a lot of authors don't generally go to. There's a few,
Hmm.
but there's not that many. And it's like, it occurred to me, the reason why they don't go here is, one, a lot of authors don't think, like, what's the connection? Well, video game, like, I don't know too many more communities more passionate than video game communities. They're some of the most impassioned fans in the world. And you get a handful of them to come on over, right? That's great. That was the plan. That was the idea. But strange things happen, Troy. My audience here is growing, but it's been going very slowly. So it didn't quite work out the way I originally envisioned it. But around since June of last year, my podcast has been going like this. It went from this number to this number. I've hit 1,000 plays download a week. So somehow in scaling this is equated to other things. So it hasn't worked out like I imagined it ever would. But I've gotten bigger. People know my brand a lot better now. And again, it's my guests. I'm not going to be like, I have great guests like yourself, but also it just seems to me that it's the regularity I'm doing it. It's how I'm doing it. It's a lot of these little things are working. Now, even if I do decide to move from Twitch to somewhere else, although I don't think I'm going to at this point, right? I might go to another platform on top of Twitch. I could see that.
Yeah.
Is right? It's the same thing. It's just going to scale me out and make me bigger and bigger. Right?
Yeah, you're reaching a new audience, but you're not ditching where you started either.
Exactly.
Because you don't have to. I mean, why lose something that you've worked hard to gain? Instead, you just add things on top of it. And this is, like I say, it doesn't, in most cases, it's exactly what you're talking about. It doesn't matter where you start as long as you start. It doesn't matter what the outcome is, what being married to the outcome. It doesn't matter if that outcome's what you thought it was going to look like or if it's something else entirely different. As long as you're moving forward and as long as you're on this journey, and again, that means showing up and doing the work. The two number one things you can do in any of this is show up and do the work. You want to become a painter and paint all kinds of things, sell paintings, show up and paint. I mean,
and by the way, do the thing or do your shit is rule 2.
Yeah, do your shit.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is, as crudely or as nicely as you want us to put that, it's basically the same thing, right? Is you show up and you do. And you can't wait for the perfect time and you can't wait for the perfect circumstance. You just show up and do. And as you do that, you just build from there. And you never know what's going to happen along the way. I mean, you're a perfect example. That's been my life too. It's like I've shown up and done the work and things happen. And it's not always the thing that I expected to happen. It's not always the person that I'm working for or doing videos for or talking to or whatever that I expected. It doesn't matter. That outcome doesn't matter. What has mattered is that journey along the way and just showing up and doing. It's just huge. It's huge.
It might be the only thing that actually truly matters in this world. The rest of it is just nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The rest of it's gravy on top.
Yeah. I'm getting tormented by cupcakes now. Like she's like I said, she sent me pictures of like what she baked, and I'm just like, you're.
Oh
That's
man,
going
that's
in
good
my
stuff.
author bio for my next birth. He gets tormented by cupcakes by his co-host on a regular basis. I'm actually going to try to get her to come on the show either like towards the end of next like of the year or start of next year sometime. She's cool. I think she'd actually
That's
enjoy
awesome.
this. Yeah, we just
That's
talk about
awesome.
just we talk about this and she likes Anchorman. Which is a hilarious movie.
Yeah, it is for
Yeah,
sure.
stay classy, San Diego, or something to that
Yeah,
effect. Anyways, yeah.
yeah, that's good stuff.
Best sign off ever. I try to steal. I would steal it, but then that they'd come after me. I'm not that
Yeah,
rich.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think the last thing I want to talk about is so we are like I said we like the pandemic has opened up. So my big thought about just how the world has worked, and I think some of the reason why some of the things are happening the way there's some in now. I've said this on a few of my pods. I realize that publishing is almost like a precursor to the rest of the world. And what I mean by that is this. We mentioned that the big five are going the way of the dinosaur. And at least as they currently are constructed, they are. I don't think there's a doubt on this. It might not be today, but 10 years from now, won't be a big five. It'll be a big three or a big two in
Mm-hmm.
10 years. Right? That's what it'll be. But it's also this too. It's going to be a niche in the corner of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it's going to be. Like I look at
For
comics,
sure.
like okay, so again, I mentioned Kickstarter earlier. The best comics are on Kickstarter. They are not and don't get me wrong, there are good comics in the comic shop. There still are. But if
Mm-hmm.
you want the absolute best stuff, you go on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
I give myself an allowance just because, frankly, I'll be like, I'll eat myself out of food. You know what that's like? You see
Yeah,
all
yeah,
this
yeah,
really good shit, and you're just like,
yeah.
no, I can't.
Backed it again. Another one. Another one. Wait a minute. Where
Yeah,
did my money go? Yeah.
I gotta be a pirate now. Arr, but anyways, but that all said, right? What's happened now, and I think this is the thing. If you look at the whole world, a community, you're in Idaho, I'm in Canmore. We're not that far away, but we're still like, I mean, if you sit there and think about the logistics of what we're doing right now, it's
Yeah.
impressive. What is a community in a world like this? It's a big thought, right? Let me go one step further. Let's go down a little bit of the crazy rabbit hole for a second. Cryptocurrency has made the banking system as we know it obsolete. Social media, for all its faults, it does have plenty of them for sure,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. It has made the mainstream media slow, sluggish, a dinosaur, obsolete. I know more about what's going on in the world just by hitting on a few hashtags on Twitter than I ever could on a news program, right? Now, some people may disagree with me on that. This is what I'm going to tell those people. Just try it. See what you find. If you're willing to do it, the work, if you're willing to do it for 20 minutes, you will see a very different world than what's being presented on television. I promise you, right? Education, YouTube University. There's so much raw information we have access to if we're willing to look. So if you really sit there and think about, I use publishing as the model. Comic book companies and publishing are niches. But I mean, government as we know it is actually kind of a niche now too. Education as we know it is kind of a niche now too. The banking system as we know it is kind of a niche now too. The media is for sure a niche now too. The big thought I've had is like, I think one of the big reasons why things are happening the way they're happening is that extinction moment isn't just in publishing.
No. No, no. This is what I think. We're going through a very disruptive time, and I think what you said earlier is absolutely right. Things may get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
In some cases, in some instances, because even social media with all its flaws, the main reason those flaws exist is because of the companies that run the social media networks,
Yep.
right? Well, there may very well come a time with blockchain and the similar decentralized system that we have with currency on the blockchain and different crypto, is that may apply to social media as well, where nobody really owns anything but their own piece of this little thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a different type of economy. It's a different type of government. I actually work with a company in Australia, and we've been talking about this when it comes to education in a big way, because traditional learning as we know it is a system that we're fully aware is broken. The key is how it's going to fix, how it's going to be fixed. And that's an extinction event that large universities that are not willing to adapt to a more skills based curriculum that's actually feeding employers what they want are going to die. It
Hmm.
might not happen tomorrow, but 25 years from now, I guarantee you that our education system will look entirely different. Now, how much of that am I going to see in my lifetime, and how much of an impact is that going to have on me? Well, you know what? I don't know, but I want to be ready to move and innovate with things as they happen. Because you're absolutely right. The publishing and the reason we talked about this is integral to our lives, right? Publishing and media are the two things that I deal with all the time,
Hmm.
right? So we can use those as an example really easily, but essentially that's just a mirror of everything else that's happening around us.
Hmm.
And I think probably some of the publishing things are going to happen more rapidly than the other things around the world, simply because it's a smaller niche. And
Exactly.
the other thing is the disruption already started to the publishing industry. It started years ago, and it's just speeding up. It's the same thing that happened to the music industry, and how that has sped up. And bands have had to find new and unique ways to make money, because selling records and touring are not what they used to be. It's not the same thing as it used to be, right? It's not as easy. So they've had to find new ways to make money, new ways to monetize their art, and new ways to reach their audience. And again, musicians, same thing as authors. You don't need a huge audience to make it. You need a niche group of people that are loving what you do, and you can still make it. But that's kind of the world that we have. Is the more decentralized things become, the better it is for creators, and really the better it is for a lot of other people, because we don't have people in niche and very narrow areas that control a lot of different things. Look at you, Mark Zuckerberg. You know,
Well,
but you know, it's good. It's good. So it's all actually good in the long run for us. But I think there are going to be some pain points along the way, for sure.
well, I just think about, okay, just me in the last 2 years. I've learned to draw. I've gotten back into video editing. Right. I've relearned, and I did not go to school for any of this. I just went and did the work. The access I have, like the way I see education going, this is my theory about it. It's not going to be about giving me an education in everything. What actually probably should be done, this is probably what should be done with people. You go back to one of the more fundamental things that's been lost and needs to come back. It's critical thinking. You give people the ability to solve their own problems first and
Hmm.
foremost. You don't have to teach them all the basics, just how to analyze, look at a problem, solve things independently on their own, using the tools they have to do that. Number one. And that will look different than what my generation is, because my generation did not have this to start with. If I had this to start with, holy crap.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
But right.
exactly.
Right. But so that's going to be the first thing. The second thing is, why would I go teach if I know that this kid either wants to, let's say for the sake of argument, that a kid wants to become a geoengineer, someone that can terraform a planet, and this kid here, he wants to make video games. They each have different uses, different
Hmm.
skill sets, and so maybe what you do is, instead of giving them the same exact education, other than maybe how to solve problems, have basic problem solving skills, you give them that as their uniform course, and then everything else is like, okay, so you're in the so you're a video gamer. We're going to teach you graphic design. We're going to teach you how to tell stories. We're going to teach you how to do these things well, right? And to you, the environmental, the ones want to change the environment. We're going to teach you how the environment works, weather systems. We're going to teach you to give you the tools and the knowledge, so you can now take it and create a better world. So instead of actually, that's where education has to go. We are
Yeah.
no longer in an age where everybody having the same education is worth a damn. It's not. It's worth fuck all. And
Well, and
right.
So this is exactly what we and other people have been talking about is micro credentials that are basically instead of having a degree, you have a bunch of credentials in things that you need that we can verify. And one of the easiest ways to verify those is on the blockchain.
Yeah.
They're verifiable. Anybody can see them, but they're very difficult to alter if it's possible at all, right? And so it's a very good way of doing things. You present people with micro credentials. You could stack those if you had enough of them to get a degree if that's what you wanted. But we're also seeing employers that are starting to embrace this same idea. They're developing their own curriculums and their own
Yeah.
credentials. And the biggest obstacle to this whole thing is the existing frameworks because the existing educational frameworks is where funding comes from, right? And so to fund people's education, we're still hanging on to this old system that we know isn't working, but it's the only way we're getting money into the system. But
So
there's a new way to deal with money. Now we're looking at now there's a new way to deal with education,
yeah.
money, the framework, the whole system, and instead people are going to have a lot more control over their own education. What do you want
Yeah.
to do? Well, here are the credentials that you need, and you can get these 6, 8, 12 different ways, whatever way you want to do them.
Yeah.
And as long as the end of it, you have the skills and the knowledge that you need to perform the task, we don't care how you got here.
Yeah.
You know, we're not tied we're allowing you to have your own journey and create, in some ways, your own outcomes.
Hmm.
And this is what people want to do. And especially younger people are at this point where, I mean, college enrollments in the US are down over and over again, with the exception of colleges that offer vocational geared training, and those are up because people are coming in and they're to college and they're not going, I want a liberal arts degree and just see what I can do. They go, no, I want to go into this profession and I want a degree that lets me do that.
Hmm.
It's a totally different way of thinking, but it is the smartest way of
Yeah.
thinking. It's one of the smartest changes that's happening right now. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, publishing, all education, all these different things are being shaken up by a generation that wants to be entertained differently. They want to be educated differently. They want to live their lives differently. They want to live a simpler life. I mean, some of the people that the van life is the most popular with are young people who are traveling around the country who are saying, I'm not going to buy a house. I'm not going to be tied down. I'm going to live in this van that I bought that I can fix myself, and all these things. And I'm not going to be tied down to the traditional job, the traditional house, they can work
Yeah.
from anywhere. It's just totally everything is being shaken up, and we're rethinking the way we work, the way we play, everything. And
Hmm.
it's, I mean, in my mind, and I mean, I'm 53. I could be one of those guys that's no, things should just stay the same. No, I'm not that way because I think that the shakeup is the very best thing that could happen to our society. We've been broken for a long time. We need to just stop. You know?
Well, like I think the only question is where we go.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had this thought the other day. Like I had this thought I think earlier this year. It's like, wait a minute, what do I need this current system for? And I realized not very much. And when I
Yeah.
had that realization, it was like, I understand what's going on right now. Okay, this makes a very different kind of sense now to me, right? Right? Because once I had that thought, it's like it all made sense to me. Now,
Well, I so I've got something for you, and almost kind of a final thought, a final
mhm,
takeaway, because this is a realization I came to recently. Is because I was talking with someone about business. And they said, look, when you're making any business or any major decision, one of the questions you ask yourself until you come to a decent conclusion of sorts is ask yourself, and then what? So say, I would like to go and do this, and then what? Well, and then this will happen, and then what?
mhm,
And then I'll do this. And then what? Until you get to a satisfactory answer. And I think our entire world right now is asking, and then what? We don't
mhm,
like the current system, and then what? We're going to change the current system to crypto instead of standardized currency. And then what? So it's a matter of like, where do we go from here? Exactly what you're talking about. But I think we need to be asking ourselves questions constantly, constantly.
That to me is that's the real question. None of the other stuff we're talking about right this minute means a damn. But this, what we're talking about right now, folks, honestly, if you're not thinking in these terms right now, you're going to be left, one day you're going to wake up and those decisions will be made for you. So be aware of what's really going on. And that is as deep as me and Troy are going to go down this rabbit hole, I think.
At least this time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's refreshing. I don't usually, it's there. I have found that again, maybe just because I'm just openly crazy. Very few people understand that way of thinking. It's nice when I get to talk to someone. It's like, oh, I get exactly where you're coming from.
Exactly, man. It's awesome.
Awesome. Well, dude, listen, I always love having you. You're gonna have to come back sometime next year for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It'll be 700 or 800 and something when we'll be back. I can't believe I'm there. Like, just it's scary, right?
It's amazing, isn't it? It's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
That all said, dude, you're definitely an inspiration. Keep doing your thing. It's awesome to see you doing your thing. If you ever do come out this way again, well, you know what we should do? Like do like one of those like postcard things where we're both waving at a mountain with everybody else. It's like
yes, that would be awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably in a year. I figure one more year of absolute crazy, and then I think we're gonna start going. You know what? We're gonna go somewhere else, and that's how I think it's gonna go. But that's that. So probably in a year or two, for sure,
things will be different. That's for
sure.
Sure.
Yeah. I think so. But until then, good sir, do you have anything coming out?
Actually, I have a book called Teaching Moments that's coming out January 18th.
Ooh.
And then I'm actually writing a book about the philosophy behind Star Trek called The Tao of Trek, and that will be coming out March 18th of next year.
Very cool. So I'll tell you, I'll give you this invite right now. Month of March, we'll talk about our favorite Star Treks. We'll actually do something completely freaking goofy for one episode.
Absolutely.
So just wait. D Space Nine, yay, nay.
Oh, yay, actually, but yay with caveats.
Fair enough.
I'll explain.
It's okay. It's my favorite of the Star Trek shows because I think the stories are just incredible.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. But I can see why someone would prefer original Trek or Next Generation. I like both shows too. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's
also partly an age thing, like when you saw the original series.
That is true.
People that are a little older like me, and when they saw the original series, it's a little bit different reaction than my wife's youngest son, who's going back to watch it now, and he's only 20 years old, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm getting through it." You know, and it's a little bit different.
Different era, different time. It's also what's possible today versus yesterday. So you got to look at it. You got to look at it like that. Yeah. But no, the original definitely is a gem of itself, and that'll be for next time. So, well, how about we'll quietly set the invite. Next March, you'll definitely come and do that. How can people find you?
Easiest way is my website. Start at my website, TroyLambertWrites.com. But also, I mean, you can find me on the Facebook and all the socials as well. So
yeah, all right. And this is my friend Troy Lambert. He's here and awesome. We had fun. He laughed at the many times I said my big mouth. I think it amused him beyond a shadow of a doubt how serious I take myself on my own show. Right.
Exactly.
But to everybody watching, listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you want to support this podcast, you can do so in a number of different ways. You can just hit the like and follow button on Twitch, twitch.tv/JustJoshing Podcast. My YouTube channel is Joshua Pantellaresco. Hit the like, subscribe, enable notifications there. My next book comes out December 1st. Is Alice 1. Yes. It is Alice in Wonderland playing croquet against Jason of the Argonauts in the Greek underworld. I promise you, it's a lot of fun. I hope you guys like Undead Hydras. And beyond all that, folks, I'm doing a bonus show tomorrow. I was supposed to do an audio of Andrew McAdavis's episode today. Unfortunately, there was a lot of interruptions, so he's agreed to come out and do another chat with me tomorrow night. So for tonight, Dirk Manning's episode will take that spot. And then tomorrow night, you're going to see the live version of Andrew's again. And then we'll do a new audio. So until then, folks, have a good night. Stay inspired. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, or don't get caught, whatever you subscribe to. And I'll see you guys next time.
All right. Thanks, everybody.